So first of all, I'm going to show you how to stamp this just very simple card with the wavy C and the larger of the two Pod of Dolphins. And you could always do some extra things on this if you wanted to. You could do a happy birthday or borders or something else, but I just wanted to show you a couple of techniques for this card. So I'm going to start off just inking up the wavy C with cyan ink pad, like that. And I quite like to put a little bit of Atlantic blue on the bottom, which if you're going from a lighter ink pad to a darker ink pad, it doesn't really mess your ink pads up that much, so I don't really mind doing that. But I know some people might not want to mix their ink pads like that. So we're going to stamp the wavy C towards the base of the card, and I'm using 14 by 14 centimetre cardstock here from EcoCraft, and it's a white fleck recycled card, and that's the same size as the 14 by 14, so it works quite well. You can see we've got a little bit of nice colour graduation going on there. And next we are going to do the dolphins, and for the dolphins I am going to use Atlantic blue for the paler, for their tummies. So I'm just going to roughly ink up the bottom of their tummies with the lighter blue, and then I'm going to use a dauber, which I've been inking up. I've been having a go at inking up the daubers using some of the refill, so putting a blob of refill onto the ink pad and then dabbing the dauber into it, and that's a good way to ink up. I found that's quite a good way to ink up the daubers with enough ink, which can sometimes be a problem, getting enough ink on the daubers. You can let me know in the comments if you've been having a go at that. And so now I've got lots of nice ink on the ink pad. I'm going to gently ink up the top bit of the dolphins with the darker colour, because they have this lovely graduation. Dolphins and whales have this as well. Maybe their noses should have been a bit paler. Should be looking at a photo of a dolphin to get this a bit accurate. I'm getting it a little bit blobby there because I've put so much ink on the dauber. It's always a bit of trial and error with stamping, but that is part of the fun of it, isn't it? I can see I've slightly over inked this one, it's quite dark. There we go. There we go. So hopefully that's going to come out alright. So now we want to position these so that I think some of the tail's still in the water. So some of it's in the water and some of it isn't, I think. Like this. Have it roughly in the middle. Got a bit of tail in the water. Press nice and hard on that one. There we go. And that's it for that one. So you could always add a bit of your own extra things to that, but that's just showing you the graduation effect on the dolphins. Right, so next I'm going to show you some stamping using the smaller Pod of Dolphins. So this card uses the sun from the Japanese collection along with the all at sea stamps, the solid background stamp, and the smaller Pod of Dolphins, and you could add a bigger one in the foreground or you could leave it without. So let's get started on that one. So we're using a 14 by 14 centimetre cardstock from EcoCraft, and it's a white sort of fleck colour, which I really like. And get started. So I'm going to start off with the all at sea design, background design, and I'm going to ink this up using Atlantic blue. It's quite apt, isn't it, for the sea. This is quite a solid background stamp, so you need to make sure you press hard enough, and you also need to make sure you put lots and lots of ink on. I quite like adding a little bit of darker blue to this. So I ink it all up with the Atlantic. Then I add in a little bit of the twilight blue, and I just angle it, so I'm just kind of making lines with the edge of the twilight blue, just in quite a random way, just like the little bits of light and dark that you get in the sea. You can just play around with this technique, but it's quite nice for the sea. You could use a few different colours if you wanted. You could add add another colour. Could add a bit of barley blue to the Atlantic. Maybe add a little bit of barley blue to the foreground. A bit of barley blue. And then if you want to blend it in a bit again, you can blend it in a little bit with the Atlantic blue. There we go. So we've got a few different blues in the sea to give it a little bit more life. And then I'm just gonna come off the bottom of the page there, so I'm just gonna put that there. So I'm going to make this stamp go about 2/3 up the page, I think, up the card. Try and get my horizon straight. I'm never very good at getting things straight. There we go. Oh, I don't know if that's quite straight, but that's going to have to do. And give that a good press down. There we go. And you can see the areas of light and dark there, which is nice. Next we're going to do the Japanese sun. This is the bigger of the two sizes. And I'm going to do colour graduation on this. And I'm going to use, what's the orange called? The orange is called Summertime. Summertime Versafine Clair. I love these colours actually for this. The Versafine Clair, really nice colours for sunset. So we've got Summertime, and I'm going to use two different reds, but you could probably just use one. One of them's a bit more purple and one of them's a bit more red. So I'm going to use the redder one next to the orange, and then the slightly more purple one at the base. So we're kind of graduating down a bit like the rainbow. And I'm going to have the sun so that it goes into the sea. Maybe a bit more orange. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to try and have it 2/3. See if I can position it so. Actually, I've done this a little bit further down. Maybe I'm going to make the sun go a tiny bit off the top of the. I've done it slightly different from the one I showed you at the beginning. This is quite a solid stamp, so it needs a good hefty push. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to finish off with the smaller Pod of Dolphins, and I'm not going to do any graduation on this because it's more of a silhouette, so I don't think it needs any graduation. So that's quite easy to ink up. And then we're just going to have those dolphins jumping right across the sun in the middle, like that. There you go. And that's finished. And that's another quite a simple card, but sometimes simple can be quite effective. Let's take it off. So you could have another dolphin in the foreground, or you could have it just nice and simple like that.